The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Fast am I, good afternoon, welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. 7 minutes after 12, Manx Care today with Teresa Cope, Chief Executive, and a couple of special guests we'll get to in just a few moments' time. But you're on, call, text, email and WhatsApp. Final chance to speak to Manx Care this year, so the floor is yours. It's down to you. And Faster Mike, good afternoon, Teresa Cope. How are we doing?
I'm good, thank you, Andy. How are you?
Good, thank you. You've got a couple of special guests. Who are they?
Yes, some very special guests. So Linda Thompson. Linda heads up our integrated women and children's and family services. And Mrs. MIchele Moroney, who's one of our consultants.
Okay. Linda, you are care group manager for integrated women, children's and families. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, Andy.
Big title. What do you do?
Okay, so big title, but very much part of a team. So within the care group, we deliver services which are specific to paediatrics, to neonates, to the acute sector for both those fields, health visiting, school nursing, infant feeding, sexual assault referral centre, integrated sexual health services, and maternity services.
Interesting there. And one thing that you mentioned in there which just piqued my interest, and that is infant feeding.
Yes.
What's the trend in infant feeding? Is it breast or is it bottle?
Well, a lot of our mums start their journey through the antenatal period very much wanting to take the pathway of breastfeeding, and I'd say the majority, up to about 70% of our mums, start the journey within the first 10 days of breast milk, and then for whatever reason we have a success rate through to about 6 months in the region of about 35 to 40%, but that's primarily in regards to circumstances on what women feel comfortable doing or what women are able to do. So there's lots of reasons why women make different choices. Okay,
MIchele Moroney, long time, I was going to say veteran, I'll say long time consultant in obstetrics and gynaecology. Faster, my good afternoon, MIchele.
Good afternoon, Andy.
Good to have you. So, are you retired or aren't you?
Very good question. Yes, I am retired from my full-time obstetrics and gynaecology practice, so no more getting out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning for emergency deliveries. But I am still on a limited contract so that I can support and maintain the satellite IVF service that I set up when I first came here. And Linda very kindly asked me to help and assist trying to improve women's health services on the island. So my special interest out of a lot of women's health issues and concerns is menopause care.
And is that better known now than it used to be? What's the situation?
With menopause, I think menopause, of course, has now been sort of front line in the public eye for a number of years. Davina McCord has revolutionised women talking about menopause and seeking treatment for menopause. But to be fair, a lot of women are still poorly informed, and also it's getting information from the right sources. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation. Obviously, women are going to see their GPs more for information and help with menopause, and there I think also we've got an educational issue amongst GPs and practice nurses where we can improve the knowledge that they have so they can guide and direct ladies to the best sources of help and care, because it's not always a tablet.
How much responsibility does the Wild West of the social media and the internet bear responsibility for misinformation? I
think it does play a large part. It has increased awareness, but what you find is with a lot of health issues, you'll get a celebrity with a health issue, and you'll get an upsurge in interest, and then it will gradually disappear again. We had the same issue with cervical cancer a few years ago, with Jade getting cervical cancer and seeking treatment, and then we had a big upsurge in women coming for their cervical smears. And of course now rates are falling because people forget.
Interesting. If you want to talk to Linda Thompson or MIchele Moroney, get in touch. And Teresa Cope is here, the chief exec of, and we've always talked about this, so we might as well get it over with, money.
Yes. And I guess I always want to take this opportunity, Andy, to sort of really explain the Manx Care finances. I know Chief Minister was on the show on Friday, and we recognise the importance of staying within our budget. And, we are looking towards next year, being really, really clear that we set a balanced budget. But I also feel huge responsibility to demonstrate to all the taxpayers that Manx Care is doing everything it possibly can to spend our money wisely, efficiently, and get best value for money. So, we are overspending. That's always been in our board papers right from month one, actually. And we are trying to reduce that. We're currently forecasting around a £27 million overspend. But I want to just explain how that's made up. So over that £27 million, £9.2 million of that is just awarding our staff a pay award. So as you'll have seen, we now have concluded the pay awards for last year. So that's really, really positive news. It means we don't have any further strike action planned, and it's a really welcome position to get to with our staff side colleagues. Other £7 million is as a result of some of the new services that we have established. So things like the frailty service, and we know we had a caller last time who really spoke highly of the new frailty service, the new investments into the frailty ward out into the community, the long service and the long COVID service. £9 million is just inflationary costs, increased costs of drugs, increased complex cases, increased contract values. And 2.8 million is linked to some of the new investments, so making sure our wards have safe staffing levels, the vaccine services fully funded, the sexual assault referral centre, which is obviously linked as part of the women's health strategy, and investments in safeguarding. So, as much as we absolutely take our responsibilities, I think it is really, really important we explain. And if I sort of take that one step further, this year, in order to have reduced that overspend, I think it is the dilemma. We either don't pay our staff a pay award, we take £9 million out of frontline services, or we overspend by £9 million. And I think those were the difficult decisions we had. And but actually, that's why so much effort is going into making sure we start next financial year in a clear, better position with a balanced-based budget.
You mentioned the equation or the flow chart last time, but it bears repetition. Where does DHSC sit in the negotiations between you and Treasury?
So we don't have any direct conversations with Treasury. The Department of Health and Social Care do that on our behalf, and the department sets our budget and also tells us what we do need to deliver during that year, and that is via our mandate. So they in very simple terms, they tell us what money we have and they tell us what services we need to deliver for that money.
OK, Julian's first on Mannin Line. You're live with Manx Care and Teresa Cope. Julian?
Hi, Andy. Nice to hear you back. And hello.
Hi, Julian.
Hi. Got a question for Teresa on future health legislation. Just wondered, Teresa, are you aware of a UK parliamentary debate taking place at 4:30 this afternoon regarding changes to the international health regulations, which effectively sets DHSC and Manx Care's health policies?
Sorry, I just missed the start of that question, Julian. Would you mind just repeating it?
Yeah, sure. Are you aware of a UK parliamentary debate that's taking place at 4:30 today regarding changes to the international health regulations, which sets DHSC and Manx Care's health policies?
No, I'm not, Julian. Do you want to fill me in?
Oh, OK. There has been a little bit of talk about this, but the amendments, if they go through, would oblige the Isle of Man to receive its health policies from about 724 miles away at the World Health Organization's headquarters in Geneva. The implication of this is that unelected officials will be able to dictate measures as far as even lockdowns, masks, mandatory vaccinations, travel, access to shops, hospitals, nursing homes. And some of the other changes that will apply to this will be that they'll be based not on a confirmed outbreak, but by declaring something called a FAKE, which is an acronym for Public Health Emergency of International Concern. It also, these new amendments, which you're currently running under, but will change, will be the removal of words like non-binding. They're going to change words like may into shall. And they're going to remove a sentence which is with full respect for the dignity, human rights and fundamental freedoms of persons. Just wondering what you make of all that.
Well, I mean, first of all, what do you make of it, Julian? What do you think of that debate? It's a debate, did you say, or a committee?
Yeah, it's a result of 116,000 people signing a petition which takes it over the 100,000 threshold, which forces a debate in Parliament if people think strongly enough about it. But effectively, things like the MHRA would no longer really be used anymore. Everything would come out of Geneva. So we wouldn't really be able to set our own health policies anymore, and even on the basis of, even if it was, well, there might be something, therefore we're going to recommend that you all lock down and take this particular medication.
Is that something you're aware of?
It's not something I'm aware of actually taking place this afternoon, but I think this sort of whole piece around, what's within the gift and control of Manx care, where does the Department of Health and Social Care fit in, where does public health fit in, where does policy on the island fit in? I think that comes up quite a bit, and we've always tried to answer it. I'm not trying to fudge it, it's just obviously it isn't for Manx care. We are a contributor to that, and actually if there is policy change or legislation change, that is very much for the Department of Health and Social Care to consider. It is slightly more simplistic for Manx care in that we will deliver what we are being asked to do in the mandate, which is basically our instruction on an annual basis from the department about what services they want to deliver. So in lots of respects, those sort of broader decisions which need more sort of governmental and policy decisions, those are sort of outside of Manx care. But I think it's always interesting, isn't it, as to how much we follow what happens in the UK, and certainly on the vaccination, we've always been very clear. We are following the JVCI guidance, which is that joint vaccination committee, and we haven't deviated from that so far. But it is an interesting debate, and perhaps one that when DHSC come on the show, they can perhaps respond to.
Okay, because DHSC is policy, Manx Care is delivering services, Julian, I think.
Yeah. I'm just interested on her take on it. If she's receiving instruction from DHSC, who are just taking it from, I don't know, the Director General of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, and a lot of these articles are sort of they're demanding of the 184 signatory countries, if they don't opt out, to actually abide by these rulings. Sort of like a one-size-fits-all.
All right. Now, thanks for that point today, Julian. And here's another one in from Texter 375. Could you please ask Teresa Cope, is Manx Care prioritising a replacement building for Radcliffe Villas, respite facility in Douglas over Cummel Moor, elderly persons complex in Ramsey? Which one's happening first? Do we know?
So the position is that they're both still as part of the capital scheme. Again, probably important to point out that the Department of Health and Social Care have responsibility for the capital programme. Manx Care doesn't own any of the buildings that we deliver services from. They are the responsibility of the department. There is a position around Cummel Moor in that additional funding has been put forward to get us to what's called I2 stage, so to complete the design and to fully cost what it will cost to replace Common Moor. That's still progressing, as is Radcliffe Villas. We do know, and you'll have heard David Hamilton speaking on Manx Radio last Friday about the review that we have done into respite provision, how stretched that service is, how there is increased demand, and how ultimately we do need to make sure the environment in respite provision is adequate. So both of those schemes, Radcliffe Villas and Common Moor, remain on the capital programme.
And 284 says, Merry Christmas to Teresa Cope. What are the plans for dermatology on the Isle of Man? Is there no dermatologist available from May 2024? Is that right?
So we have Dr. Neil Hepburn, who's been one of our long-standing visiting dermatologists, who retires from May. That's right. We have been looking at a consultant service, so that is out to advert. There's a couple of options here. We do work with a number of partners, and we're very interested in linking up with the Northwest and our consultants in the Northwest who provide this. But you will also know that we started a scheme called GPs with Extended Scope in Dermatology as part of the sort of programme of work in Manx Care about 2.5 years ago. All of those GPs with extended role have now sort of qualified. They are all seeing patients in their own rights, supported by a lead GP. And that service is wrapped around with some excellent clinical nurse specialists who work out of the Ramsay Skin Service. So we do know we need to replace Neil Hepburn. We do need an on-island physical presence for the dermatology service, and that's the consultant that we are currently looking to secure through a couple of different routes, and we'll be able to be updating everybody in the new year. OK,
Juan. Hi, Juan. You're live with Teresa Cope and Manx Care.
Hey, Andy. Hi, Teresa.
Hi,
girls.
Juan.
How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Hi. I'm very good. Hope you can sort Andy out while you're up there. He keeps having sick days off. Have a word with him while you're up there. See if you can sort some medication out for him. He's just on a little bit of housekeeping before I start. I think the last time that I spoke to you, Teresa, I mentioned about the increase of shingles, and I think both you and Andy said that you'd not heard about that. I just wanted to touch on to a report by healthtoday.com just saying, why is shingles on the increase in the UK? Just like to just validating what I said earlier, and touching back onto other side effects from the COVID vaccine. I wanted to ask a question on the delay in the Macmillan Centre, which has been put forward by Manx Cancer Group, and I'm picking up on a lot of their stuff that they're putting on social media. Very, very good group, very, very responsive fundraising, are all kept on the Isle of Man. So I'd just like to ask a question on why there's been so many delays in getting this progressed on their behalf. My second question is just a generalisation on how you guys feel about where the NHS is going. And I'm looking at information from Every Doctor, which is outsourced private care within the NHS, traced back to a company called HealthSure, which has been traced back to belonging to HSBC, Barclays and NatWest, and Connect Health, which belongs to Lloyds. So banks are now starting to play a big part in the NHS. So money is more prominently than ever now starting to overtake healthcare on the private sector. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on them two pieces, where the NHS is going in so much as staying as NHS and privatisation, and the delay in the Macmillan Centre.
OK, if I take the Macmillan Centre first. So you're right, this is a group of people who are incredibly committed to improving cancer care on the island, and we work really, really closely with the whole team, with David Gaughan, Julie Stokes and all the other people who support support that piece of work. There has been ongoing discussions. Again, it comes back to that point that I was talking to with another caller, in that Manx Care doesn't actually own any of the buildings or the land that it runs services from. So this has been a collaboration between Manx Care in terms of supporting the positioning of the Macmillan Centre, a new Macmillan Centre. We already do have one within the hospital grounds. I think that's really important. We make that point. There is already a Macmillan Centre. And finding the new location for it so we can offer more services from that location. But again, it's the Department of Health and Social Care who have to actually finally give the approval for that. That approval has now been given, but I think these things always take longer, just going through the sort of the due diligence and the governance of that. But we had a really positive outcome in the last week or so. And we expect to see some contractors and diggers and work starting on the site just between Christmas and New Year. So it is now underway, and we really, really look forward to it. We have regular meetings, so it's something we very, very much support, and it will have huge benefits for the island. Just coming on to the future of healthcare, and I guess I sort of give a view from the Manx Care perspective, in that we know there isn't enough money in the health and care system to do everything we wanted to do. And that is causing us some real problems. It's caused us to be in an overspend position this year. It's causing us to really having to consider what we are able to fund next year. And we've sort of tried to explain that as transparently as we can, both to the public, both to the department, and set our budget. But we equally know that we cannot keep affording to deliver the full range of services. So there are some very, very difficult decisions for Manx Care, but particularly for the Department of Health and Social Care and the Treasury and Government, as to what the amount of funding in health and care really does buy you, particularly when you lay on the cost of things like pay awards, inflation, the growth and the increased growth in services. Just even to stand still, we needed over £27 million of extra funding just to stand still and deliver exactly the same as we did last year, this year. That's without any new service developments, any additional growth in the population. So there are some difficult decisions ahead. What does that mean? I genuinely don't know. I am not the sole decision maker in this, but there will have to be some discussions about what is affordable.
I mean, when you say things like that, Teresa Cope, at some point you have to give people bad news. Because technically, I mean, if not literally, demand for services is unending.
It is.
As people are living longer and longer, routinely into their 90s nowadays. Nobody smokes anymore, so no one dies in their 70s of lung cancer and emphysema anymore because nobody smokes. Yeah. So people are living an awful lot longer. The pharmaceutical industry will be keen to sell you every drug possible. All the new equipment manufacturers will want to sell you the latest scanners.
Absolutely.
And at some point, you're the person who has to give somebody bad news.
Absolutely. And this is the global healthcare challenge, and we are not unique. Massively rising drugs costs. You know, I've already said, you know, our drugs bill is 9,000 and contracts bill is 9,000 more this year than last year, for exactly the same level of service. And that's without doing things like, you know, delivering the nice technologies, additional investments in new services. You know, this is the problem. We've got rising costs, staff shortages, an ageing population, and it will mean that we are going to have to make some difficult decisions if we are going to curtail the healthcare budget, which we know we have to. We know the island cannot afford to keep spending on healthcare what it has been or what it did commit to in the Sir Jonathan Michaels report.
Unless the politicians make a difficult decision.
Absolutely, but I know that is sat amongst a wider set of competing priorities, and I know education is just as important, infrastructure is just as important, adequately funding the police and the fire service is just as important. So healthcare doesn't have the monopoly on this, but my role is to make sure that I'm spending the money that Manx Care has wisely, but that we are signalling what does the quality of healthcare look like. We have just over the last 12 months had a comprehensive inspection regime from the Care Quality Commission and from Ofsted in social care. That has told us the standards that we need to meet and the deficits that we currently have in our system. And those all have to be responded to with new services or business cases or additional investment. We have been incredibly efficient with the money that we have got. So just in the last sort of 2 years since Manx Care has been running, we have taken £15.7 million of cost out of this system. So if we have reduced our costs by £15.7 million. Now that is lost in the overall overspend, but £10 million of that is cash out, physically cash out, and 5.7 is efficiency savings. But we can't keep, the standards in healthcare keep raising. There are always new standards to reach, new quality standards, and our doctors and nurses and allied health professionals expect to work in a system which they can be secured and assured is high quality. And that does often cost money to get to that required standard and then maintain it.
Okay, and a brief word about shingles.
I think Public Health have made a decision around shingles, and I don't know exactly the detail, but I'm happy to come back to Ewan with that later.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ewan. We've got to crack on. It's 28 minutes before 1, live today with Teresa Cope, the Chief Exec of Manx Care. She's along with Linda Thompson, Care Group Manager for Integrated Women's, Children's and Families, and MIchele Moroney is here, Consultant in Obstetrics and Gynaecology.
Hi, James from Tracy Bell here. Do you need new dentures? Do you need new crowns? Well, with nearly 60 years of combined experience, the team at Tracy Bell offer outstanding treatments and results in traditional and modern dentistry, customised discreetly just for you. Call 613323 or visit tracybell.co.uk and arrange your consultation. Tracy Bell, helping you to be better.
Perfectly timed for getting the beers in and the wine and the fizz and the spirits, not forgetting low and no alcohol drinks. ShopRite and WineRite have a fantastic selection of seasonal savours. 25% off 6 bottles of wine. Mix and match across the range. £18 for a litre of branded spirits. Bulk beers at incredible prices. 24 cans of Diet Coke and Pepsi Max, just £7. There isn't a drink left out. Festive savours at ShopRite and WineRite. Terms, conditions and price restrictions apply. See in-store for details.
Have you been invited to take part in the Household Income and Expenditure Survey? It's one of the most important surveys for our island because the information you provide is vital data for our island's financial planning. It helps us calculate our VAT revenue from the UK. Plus, it gives us a better understanding of the financial strains on residents, so we can support those who are struggling. If you've been invited, please take part. Visit gov.im/HIES for more information.
When you need a fitting memorial or headstone for a loved one, contact Manx Memorials in Peel. This long-standing family-run Manx company offer a wide range of granite and marble headstones and memorials, along with an island-wide inscription and renovation service. Manx Memorials skilled professionals will take the time to help you choose a suitable memorial, and we're proud to say we'll beat other local quotes. Call 843 861 or email matthew@manxmemorials.co.uk.
There was no room in the Perspective Inn yesterday for the Homelessness Strategy and Children's Champions report. So, in the agenda before Christmas, all through the House of Keys, we have a minister stirring and even some cows. No wise men but Tynwald stars David Ashford, Claire Barber and Kerry Sharp are with us to give some good news for the homeless and for vulnerable children, as well as encouragement for campaigners seeking introducing new laws to protect puppies and kittens. That's Agenda this evening at 6 p.m. on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. Loads to stuff into this week's bumper Tinbold Christmas Agenda stocking.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
And Neil's on the line. Hi, Neil. You're live with Manx Care today.
Good afternoon, Andy, and good afternoon to your guest. It has been clearly apparent to many of us for some considerable time that the department is under considerable financial pressure. I just wonder, have the Council of Ministers actually sat down with Mrs. Cope and other senior executives within the department and worked out a strategy for this policy of increasing the population? The hospital, in common with Salty Row Reservoir and the Irish team, they were all put together in the early 80s, and they were sized for a maximum population of 85,000. We are at and probably well above that now. So I wonder, is a strategy being worked out? Because when I see key workers coming here, one person just doesn't arrive on their own. They have their wife, their 2 or 3 children, fairly obvious. But then, of course, they have the parents, brother and sister, both sets of in-laws. So you end up with a huge input of elderly people. Everywhere I cycle around now, I see loads and loads of elderly people driving around in their cars. So my question is very simple. Have the Council of Ministers sat down and worked out a strategy for this increase in population?
Okay.
Thank you.
And if they have they spoken to Manx Care?
We haven't done the detailed modelling. I think that would be a piece of work that the Department of Health and Social Care would do with the Council of Ministers. We understand the aspiration. We are currently doing a piece of what's called capacity and demand modelling across all of our services to understand what we anticipate the demand to be across all of those core services and specialties. But in terms of the detail, no. But, I do know we have got a very ageing population, and we do also have people who come to the island quite late in life with some significant health needs. And, I think the example you've just given is not untypical. And I know, people like Claire Christian have raised some of that in Tynwald recently.
I mean, when you hear the Chief Minister saying, it's government policy to get 15,000 more people here, 4,000 of them will be workers, they're obviously going to make demands on an already overstretched Manx Care. I mean, the crunch is coming, isn't it?
It is, and I think the devil is always in the detail about, the composite of those 15,000. What types of roles are they in? I would love them to be doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, and people who work in the healthcare sector, because that would really go some way to helping our workforce gaps. But yes, the devil is always in the detail as to whether they bring children with them, whether the education system can cope with that, whether those children have any special needs, whether they bring extended family members who will have healthcare needs. Inevitably, we all need healthcare at some point in our lives, so it's probably unrealistic to think we just bring in young, healthy people who are going to contribute to the economy. We've got to take it in the round, and this is where ultimately we'll work with the Department of Health and Social Care to sort of do that detailed work. But, as we sit here today, the answer to the honest question is no, there hasn't been the detailed working about what that actually looks like in practice for Manx Care.
OK, Neil, I appreciate your call. Thanks for being with us today. Here's a quick one in from Trevor. Just says, did Teresa Cope support the suspension of the work permit system?
We're not entitled to a view. We're not part of that decision-making process. Actually, I think we've talked openly on this show before, suspending the work permit system would assist Manx Care. It would take down some of the barriers around some of the more specialist workers and roles that we need within Manx Care, and would ease that path.
Because it's been mentioned that more than 90% of work permit applications are not waved through, but are passed. So I mean, surely if you're aiming to get skillful, qualified, able people, you should be able to, the work permit system shouldn't be any sort of barrier, should it?
No, personally no, because I think what I'm always aiming to do is to appoint the best person for the role. And, that sort of, whether that person is a Manx resident or not, shouldn't be the first consideration. It's the best person for the role. And some of our roles are heavily specialised. We will always want to support the local workforce, and we do that. And a lot of our local investment around developing roles within the organisation and training and development is to really support our own workforce, our local workforce, to have the skills. But we also recognise that in healthcare and social care there are some highly specialised roles, and sometimes we don't have those skills on island.
Okay, Jerry's on now. Hi Jerry, you're live with Manx Care.
Hi Andy. Andy, I just want to point out that I get the feeling, as they do in the UK, elderly people, that's all we ever hear now is elderly people. I've just listened to Teresa saying about elderly people coming onto the island, and the cost is going up because we're living longer, more medication, elderly people. I've got the feeling that this lady eventually is going to start cutting down on the medication for elderly people. Do they need it or don't they need it? They're getting on a bit. What we forget, I don't know if she forgets, that these elderly people are the people who give us what we have today. Yet we get treated like the UK, elderly people. There's too many elderly people on the island. I am getting tired of listening to people like her who said it's a growing population and we're all getting older, so we all need medication. I don't understand why the elderly people here and all over the UK, don't know about Europe, are suffering, constantly suffering. And we don't seem to be any wiser for what these people have done. Yet she talks about the elderly people coming onto the island. That means medication. She's quite happy, I'm quite sure, eventually to turn around and start cutting down medication for the elderly, not sending them off the island anymore to get treatment because they're too old.
That's definitely not the case, and I'm sorry if that's come across, but that is not the case. This is about being able to anticipate the level. We know what the growth will be, what the demographic growth is, and what the health needs to comprehensively look after older people is. So whether that's social care services, whether that's within hospital services, medication, things like the frailty service. This isn't about not providing the appropriate care and medication for older people. That is absolutely not it. It's about being able to accurately predict the types of services those people will need to be able to live independently and longer. We're a big advocate, and in conjunction with the Department of Health and Social Care, we are looking at reforming the way things are done, so actually people can stay independent and in their own homes for as long as possible and not need residential and nursing care as early as what they do. So it's quite the opposite, but just not acknowledging that we have a different demographic and a demographic that will have increased health and social care needs is not what we should be doing. It is important we acknowledge it, recognise it, plan for it and put the right services in place. But there is a resource implication to all of those decisions.
Okay, Jerry?
No. I'm sorry, Andy. Absolutely disgusting. She shouldn't have butted in. I've got a right to speak.
No, you can't. That was me who actually brought Teresa in, so just carry on there. But, I mean, the point she's making, I don't think anybody says that old people aren't worth it. Nobody's ever said that, Jerry.
They're not saying that old people are not worth it. It comes up in our conversation. We're getting an elderly population. I didn't say she didn't say that. To be rude and butt in is not really what she should be saying. She should listen to what I have to say first, then answer it.
Okay, well, it was me who butted in, so that's my fault. But anyway, we are tight for time, so what's your final word?
Yeah, okay, Andy. No, it's fine. It's fine. Whatever I say now isn't going to matter any.
Okay, I'm sure that isn't the case, but we're not. Nobody's saying that elderly people don't count, and I probably count myself as one of those.
Very happy to chat with Jerry, and very happy to meet with Jerry.
Okay, but again, it's an interesting point in that we talk about an ageing population. Now, that's happening all over Europe, isn't it?
It's global. It's global. Everyone's living longer.
And that's also down to the fact that the birth rate's dropping in Western Europe as well, plummeting in some places.
Yes, but it is really important that we put the right services in place, and it is about ensuring people feel able to stay in their own homes, remain independent in the communities. All of our strategies are around responding to that, but I think it is, as I say, it is just important we acknowledge that is a global reality, and people who are in their 70s, 80s, 90s are fit, active, independent often, and actually there will require a level of healthcare intervention which 20, 30 years ago perhaps wouldn't have been available.
And it's a fact of life that there are many more people who are over the 100 years of age who are living nowadays. Years ago, and again, I go back to smoking, people used to start smoking at the age of 14, would retire at 65, often having done very physical work, and would be dead before they were 75.
Absolutely.
Now, very few people do real physical work, and I'm talking about, when the days when dustbin men used to carry dustbins and coal men used to carry 100-weight sacks of coal. Doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And now people are living an awful lot longer. That's fantastic that people live longer, but it costs money.
It does, and that is just the reality. And that's, we talked on the show a couple of times ago about the frailty service and the investment that Manx Care has made in the community geriatricians, and being able to really look after older people well, maintain their independence, get them on the right medication, deal with the sort of polypharmacy issues that arise. It's just a natural progression that it's important we plan for. But yes, there is a resource implication. But I don't want any person to think that means that we're going to withdraw services or treatment, or they're not going to have the same access as somebody who's younger. That's absolutely not the case. But we do have to recognise the costs and plan accordingly to get the right services in place.
OK, Judy in Colby dropped a note in and just said, I don't know if this has been raised since September. Manx Care put out a survey on the internet asking patients for opinions on services for women and asking them to rate services and ailments in order of importance to us, the patients. This included serious ailments like diabetes, antenatal care, drug addiction, menopause. So can the ladies explain, please, if the survey is in some way to inform spending in these services? Because I was worried at the time by this. The survey also mentioned changes to women's services and what we made of them. I was unaware of the changes, so I couldn't comment. Could your guest shed some light?
So I think Linda can probably answer this one, because it's the whole point of Linda and Michele being with us today, to be able to provide a bit of feedback on that.
Okay, yes. So I'll explain. The survey went out, and it was a survey that had taken place across in England. NHS England had undertaken the survey. So we valued what the women of the Isle of Man thought in regards to how they felt we should design women's services going forward with a 10-year strategy. Actually, the survey results that came through were very similar to that of the UK, and the actual top areas were gynecological conditions, for example, endometriosis and fibroids, fertility, pregnancy loss, pregnancy and postnatal support, menopause, ovarian, womb, cervical, vulva and vaginal cancers, and mental health. So we're analysing all the data that came through with a plan to then reach out and form some focus groups with the aim to get the voice of the younger women of the Isle of Man and the older age range as well. Although we did paper copies and electronic surveys, we recognised that we didn't quite reach these areas. So it's about designing services going forward. So some of the work's already been undertaken. So for the first time since April of this year, we now have a tumour site for women cancers, which was not present previously. So we're now on par with every other tumour site for cancer for women's services. Additionally, we have a lot of feedback on the island about pregnancy loss. So we're working closely with Vicky Christian as a member of the public, so Voices in Participation, to ensure that we improve services going forward within this area. And currently the works are being undertaken within Nobles to adopt a gynae ambulatory care and early pregnancy assessment unit.
Okay. When will you come to some sort of conclusion about this? Is there any change in policy, Linda?
So there won't be a change in policy. So we need to go back to the DHSC with the findings of the survey that went out to determine what the DHSC wish us to mandate going forward. A lot of what has come out of the survey today is already established. So it's actually business as usual. It's just about growing and developing where those services might be delivered and how they might be delivered and by who.
OK, we're live with Manx Care in just a few moments' time.
Woodburn House, in the heart of Douglas, offers the perfect location to create your dream event. If you're looking for a versatile space to host a corporate event or an elegant location to celebrate a loved one's life, at Woodburn House, we have the experience to bring your vision to life. Be inspired and contact our educated events team today. Woodburn House. Visit woodburnhouse.im or call 888 300. That's 888 300.
Walk through the northern lights into a land of ice and snow at Ramsey Garden Centre. Indoor and outdoor lights, a magical range of real and artificial trees, decorations, gifts and much more. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, Albert Road.
Are you a reluctant landlord, tired of tenant hassles, cursed by constant maintenance, tormented by empty properties producing no rent? Want to escape these worries or get out altogether?
At Prime Lettings, we understand your pain and have bespoke solutions to release you from these problems. Ring us on 616 707 for a free confidential chat.
Prime Lettings. We're on call and on the ball at 616 707.
Steam into Christmas with family and friends on the unique Isle of Man Railways dining car. Our winter events programme has something for everyone. Journey through the Manx countryside enjoying sparkling festive fun. To get into the Christmas spirit, book now by calling our Yuletide team on 697457 or visit rail.im and experience one of our festive train adventures.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Manx Care today, we're talking with Linda Thompson, Care Group Manager for Integrated Women, Children's and Families, Teresa Copes, Chief Exec, and MIchele Moroney is with us. And again, when did you first start on the Isle of Man, MIchele?
I was born on the Isle of Man, but obviously left to go to university and work in the UK. I came back 1999.
Okay, I've got a message here, and this is from Lawrence, and he said, please don't take this as being light-hearted because it's not. I think MIchele Moroney has been responsible for more babies than Barry White music on the Isle of Man.
Well,
why would he think that, MIchele?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I came over, I came over as a general obstetrician and gynaecologist, but obviously my main interest was fertility, and yes, sometimes ladies need a little bit of help, and sometimes they need IVF, and to be able to provide that, I've been responsible for a few babies.
You say that very quickly, but that's been a long, distinguished career in getting that right for many women, and it affects ordinary health, it affects mental health, It keeps couples together, saves marriages sometimes.
It does indeed, yes. I think the fertility problems, they put a great stress on mental health for both partners, and it can be the breaking point of relationships. Equally, the worries obviously are that maybe couples have relationship difficulties, and they think, well, if we can have a baby, it'll all be better. But sometimes that can even make the cracks wider. So there's a lot of psychology and a lot of counselling goes on with the fertility work that I do.
Okay, it's a couple of quick questions for Teresa Cope. Will we ever own our own helicopter? Is that any sort of ambition?
I don't see us ever being able to have that money to have our own helicopter. We get a service from Great Northern Air Ambulance Service through a contract, and I think that serves us well, along with our excellent fixed wing service.
Okay, and here's another one. I'm just going to come to this. This is regarding money as well. How do you answer this is often levelled at Manx Care, too many middle managers, too many managers?
Yeah, and I think it's something we're really, really conscious of. We want our clinicians to feel supported, and we don't want clinicians doing admin work. We want clinicians doing frontline work, and every contact and interaction they have is with direct patient care, and so it's always a balancing act, and I think sometimes for Manx Care we suffer from a relatively small but beautiful size, in that you still need one of something, whether you are running an organisation for 3,000 staff or for 10,000 staff, and whether it's a £300 million budget or £1 billion. So sometimes the economies of scale is very difficult to achieve, but we scrutinise it very carefully, and I would say we're not overmanaged.
Okay, well, it's the end of another year. Open invitation to pop in next year. So thanks to MIchele Moroney, the consultant obstetrician and gynaecologist. Also Linda Thompson, Care Group Manager for Integrated Women's, Children's and Families. And Teresa Cope of Manx Care. So Teresa, a final message for staff and the people of the Isle of Man.
To our staff, thank you for all you do. You are truly amazing, and to the public, we are doing the very best we can, and we will continue to be accountable to you.
That's it. Back with another open line tomorrow on Manx Radio for Mannin Line. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
WINT